Hello everyone, it's the Historical Gamer once again, and today we're returning to Ultimate General Civil War on the eve of the Battle of Antietam, the bloodiest day in American history, some 22,000 casualties. Not the bloodiest in terms of wounded of any battle, or even in terms of killed of any battle, but the bloodiest single day in American history. Of course, when you add up the casualties on both the North and the South, you kind of get to count twice because both sides were Americans. With that being said, we are in command of the Union Army of the Potomac. This is part 22 of a Let's Play as I'm playing through the War as the Union. So far, I've known nothing but success. Maybe I should have had the difficulty level turned up a little bit, but we are undefeated. I feel like a UFC fighter who's, on top of the world and no one can even come close to beating him or something to that effect here. You can see we've known nothing but triumph. We currently have a reputation of 70, which gives us a bit of a buffer in terms of if we want to spend money or spend reputation points to get, for example, we could spend reputation. We have 55 we can spend. We could get both $120,000 more and 5,000 more soldiers if we wanted to buff up our army a bit. Not sure if I'm going to do that, but certainly aware of the fact that we could. Now, right now, we're coming off the victory at the Battle of South Mountain, and we do have one career point that we can use. So I'm actually going to go ahead and go in here and use this one career point that we have and apply it to Army Logistics, because I think it's going to be important to increase the amount of ammunition that we have going into a major battle like the Battle of Antietam. So we'll go ahead and do that. That'll give us an additional 10% ammunition at the start of the battle, in addition to these resupply amounts that we have here. Now, the First Corps is in good shape already. If you guys recall, the entire First Corps is armed with rifled muskets. So the 1855 Springfield is the most prevalent, but we also have quite a few Lorenz rifled muskets, which are an Austrian design, as well as one brigade being equipped with pattern 1853 Enfield rifled muskets, and then one Confederate kind of copy of the Springfield, the Harper's Ferry M1855. The Second Corps is also full strength. We need to replace Nelson here in command of this brigade, but other than that, the Corps is fully built up. The 1st Division in the Second Corps is entirely armed with rifled muskets. The 2nd Division is almost entirely smoothbore, with the exception of a single brigade armed with Enfields, and the 3rd Brigade is entirely smoothbore armed. Additionally, the 3rd Corps here is a partial corps. It is not fully built out, not even close. It has one full division and one partial division. So this is definitely the weakest of the formations. And we don't have enough recruits here because the Battle of South Mountain was so bloody, because we lost over 8,000. I want to say we lost like 8,000 soldiers, but I can't remember exactly. We lost several thousand soldiers, and we had to go ahead and, replace those losses, which I've already done. But because of those losses, we haven't been as easily able to build up this 3rd Corps. I'm pretty confident, given I know the Confederate Army at the Battle of Antietam is relatively small, that we can still defeat them on the field of battle without a full 3rd Corps. I could spend almost all of my reputation to build this corps up a little bit larger, but even then it wouldn't be full strength. The most we could get is 7,000 recruits. We've got 2,000 here. We could buy 5,000 more. That would allow us to fill out the 2nd Division. It would allow us to build out part of the 3rd Division, but we'd still end up being a little bit short of a full corps. That should be okay, though, because our 1st Corps has over 20,000 infantry, our 2nd Corps has over 20,000 infantry, and the Confederates, I believe, only have around 34 to 39,000 troops that they'll have to bring to bear. So between our first 2 corps, we already outnumber the Confederates by almost 10,000 men. I believe. Anyway, that's my assumption, assuming things follow history. I know this game does scale the size of your enemy somewhat based on the size of your own army, but there have been some patches that have been put into the game to limit how large the enemy armies can be. And on the Confederate side, that helps a lot, but it helps even more on the Union side, where the Confederates generally have a qualitative advantage over you. Now, we do need to replace General Nelson. If we go into the armory here, barracks, we can see we've got several commanders who are wounded. Colonel Nelson is one of those. So we're going to need to replace his position in this brigade. Unfortunately, we don't have anyone who ranks high enough to replace him, in my opinion. The highest rank is a major, and I'm not going to give a major command of 2,000 soldiers. I'm actually going to dip into our prestige reserve. We're going to go ahead and purchase Ambrose Burnside, the famous whisker-cladded officer, although I will say this image doesn't look very much like him. And we'll use 4 of that 55 reputation on Ambrose Burnside, and we'll go ahead and put him in command of Nelson's brigade. You can see here, it's a very good brigade, reasonable experience, still on the lower end, but not horrible, with rifled muskets. So I want to make sure they've got a decent commander in charge there. With that being said, we've got about $43,000 and 2,000 recruits left to play with, so I'm going to go ahead and work on filling out the 2nd Division. If we actually go to the armory here, we'll see we have over 800 Springfield 1842s. We have a lesser amount of several other weapon types. So I'm actually going to go ahead and kind of mix and match. We're not going to build a full brigade with all 2,000. We're going to build what we can with one of these other weapon types. So let's go over here. Let's see. We've got $40,000 to play with. Can we afford the Springfield? We could. There really aren't any other weapon types that are worth sort of a partial build out. We could go with a full brigade of palmettos probably, but I think a few, 1,000 soldiers with 1855 rifled muskets is going to be more valuable than, a lesser force. Let's give them 1,500 soldiers here. That's going to use up almost all of our money. But we'll go ahead and give 1,500 soldiers with these rifled muskets. That leaves us with 623 left. We're actually going to build a undersized brigade for those 623. I may have to sell some of these weapons, though. I have some excess inventory in stock, and I'll need to... Well, actually, I can probably equip them with the Springfield there. Unless, do I have anything else I want to... The 1842 smoothbore Springfield, that is. Unless I want to give them Harper's Ferries. Those are better weapons. I don't know how much it would cost. Let's go ahead and go back to the 3rd Corps. Let's build this 4th Brigade out. It'd have to be a major again, unfortunately, because that's just all we have. 18... What do we have here? The Harper's Ferry, sorry. Doesn't even let me see how much it would cost, because I need the full amount to be able to afford that, which is kind of lame. Let's see here... Damn. Alright, so we're going to have to sell some stuff in order to be able to really figure this out. Now, we don't even have enough 1841s in the arsenal, like in the shop, that we could purchase, so we're just going to sell all of those, because really we can't even... We have 200 and we can't buy more. And we're going to do the same thing for the M&J type, which is a Confederate weapon, so again, we'll sell those. That gives us 8 grand in the bank that we can go ahead and jump back in here and see what we have to play with. We could afford the palmettos. We'll go ahead and give these guys palmettos. We don't have a full brigade of them, so we'll go ahead and shrink them down. And this will be an undersized brigade. Obviously, it's not ideal to have a much smaller brigade than full strength, but it's certainly having a few hundred troops anyway. It is worth something. So we'll do that. And that'll use up all of our recruits. I don't want to use this large stockpile we have of prestige, because if we lose this battle... we're going to lose 40 prestige, and we'll get really close to having some serious morale penalties. Right now, we have some nice morale boosts, an 8 morale boost for all of our brigades, and I don't really want to endanger that. So we've got technically a full 2nd Division in terms of the number of brigades here, but it is under strength by about 2,000 men. With that being said, so we've basically got one full strength division in the 3rd Corps, one under strength division, and no 3rd Division. Still 14,000 soldiers in that unit. Coupled with the 46,000 troops elsewhere, we've got about 60,000 soldiers we can bring to bear. Someone in the chat just asked if we have any Enfields in our unit. Yes, or in our forces. Foreman's Brigade in the 1st Corps has Enfield muskets or rifled muskets, and there's one other unit in here somewhere. Webb's Brigade in the 2nd Division of the 2nd Corps also has Enfields. Okay, let's see here. So I think we're about ready to fight. I'm trying to think if there's anything else we need to do. We've got some weapons in our arsenal. There's no really reason to sell these. I mean, the additional money doesn't give us more recruits, so I think we're about ready. I guess what we'll do is we've got a little bit of excess money. Let's go ahead and bump supplies up on the first corps a little bit. We'll bump supplies up on the second corps, and the third corps, which is a little bit smaller, we get a little additional supply bumps. So you can see here 16,000 supplies in one of our wagons, 18,000 in the other two. With that being said, let's go ahead and jump into the Battle of Antietam. Now, just as a reminder, because we won both of the minor battles in this campaign, as well as winning the Battle of Second Manassas, the Confederate Army is substantially weaker at the Battle of Antietam than it otherwise would be. You can see here there's a 5% reduction in enemy army size because of Second Bull Run, and then there's a 2.5% for each of these smaller battles. So the enemy army is actually 10% weaker than it otherwise would be. So imagine, if they had 40,000 men as their default, they're down 4,000 soldiers. That's 2 full-size brigades that they're reduced because of those previous victories. So that really does help out. Okay, so we'll go ahead and jump in. You can see if we win, we'll get 25 prestige. If we'll lose 40 prestige. All right, so there are 3 wings. We only have 3 corps. You could put troops in reserve. You can have up to 5 corps on the field of battle. I have no clue how in this game you would ever have 5 corps by the Battle of Antietam, but I'm sure some brilliant commander does. With that being said, we've got 3 corps, and we have to have 3 deployed. So what I'm actually going to do here is I'm going to go ahead and put our first corps in the attack on the left. This is the most important attack in the Battle of Sharpsburg or the Battle of Antietam. The fight starts on the left flank. The Confederates have their strongest forces at the start of the battle on the left flank. And if you crush their left, everything else goes much easier. Their center will generally crumple if you win on the left. So the left flank is the most important flank in the Battle of Antietam. I'm then going to go ahead and assign my second most powerful corps. The second corps, the same size as the first that we just positioned, just with slightly lower experience and weapons. We're going to put them on the right. Now, the reason I'm putting them on the right is because when the battle expands, when you start attacking the Confederate center, it's interesting that the forces that come in to attack the center come way back in the rear. So they actually take a good hour or more if you're not running them to the front to even get in position. So the attack on the Confederate position in the center will actually start when you expand to the center. You'll have a portion of your right flank and the center attack will also show up. But the center attack is way off to the north. The right flank includes the troops crossing the stone bridge. So if you have your second strongest force here, you can bring half of it immediately to bear on the Confederate center. And the center attacking force is fine, but it's almost like a reserve because it comes way in the rear of the battle, takes a long time to bring up, and it's nice to have, but it's not critical. Additionally, the Confederates have a relatively strong force that's going to arrive in the southern portion of the battlefield, so to have our right flank anchored with something strong and having the center a little bit weaker is okay, because if we crush the Confederates on the left, this force will then end up attacking the center anyway, and this third corps will basically just act as a reserve to come up and help finish the Confederates off if everything goes to plan. But of course, in warfare, never expect everything to go to plan. You can see here, according to our intelligence, we don't know how many corps, divisions, or brigades the enemy have. We have an estimate of 36,000 enemy soldiers, 93 guns. We're bringing to bear some 65,000 soldiers and 132 guns. So 40 more artillery pieces, almost 30,000 more soldiers. We've got a hefty advantage. Okay, so we'll go ahead and start. And there's going to be a long-winded explanation of, oh my goodness, the Confederates have chosen to face our army near the town of Sharpsburg. The bridge nearest the town will probably be very well defended. Act with caution, blah, 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 blah. I'm going to skip through all of this. This is a little bit long-winded, so I'm just waiting till I have the skip option. All right. I think the kind of showing you where everything is happening on the map is kind of cool, but I don't think it works well in large battles like this. All right, so the first deployment is of 8 brigades, so the majority, or half, a little bit over half of our first corps is going to be deployed here. You can see here they're all on the northern end. This is the first phase of the battle. This is the first group of soldiers that we get to work with. We're going to go ahead and immediately take Crocker's brigade, which is a little bit less experienced. We're going to put them on the far left. The reason is, if we zoom out here, we've got 2 initial objectives in this first part of the battle. We've got to take the Dunker Church, which is the kind of anchor of the Confederate left. And then we've got to take Nicodemus Heights, which is a position on the flank. So if the Union advances south toward the Dunker Church, which is where the majority of the Confederate defenders are going to be, you leave your flank exposed to Confederate artillery that can fire right into the side of your force as you advance, as historically was the case. So we're going to put one brigade here so we can advance down Nicodemus Heights. This is an objective point, and then we'll go ahead and secure the west side of the Dunker Church by taking that position. The rest of our forces are going to advance south on the Dunker Church, which is going to be the most difficult objective to take. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and put some of our best brigades kind of in the center of this advance. So we're going to put the 2nd Iron Brigade, the Springfield Brigade, and the Irish Brigade, all sort of, actually we'll put the Irish Brigade off to the right, all sort of toward the center. We'll put Harris's Brigade and Garfield kind of in the center and then on the left. And then we'll go ahead and put Pettit as kind of a reserve, but he'll be advancing south. Additionally, George B. Gamer, that's me, is going to be kind of in the middle here. Artillery will be on the roadway here because they're going to need to advance to even be relevant. And then our supply wagon will also be back here. So just a general deployment. We'll go ahead and hit play to start the battle, but then we're going to immediately pause and issue our orders. Okay, so you can see here we've got all of these forces here. We're going to go ahead and take Crocker's Brigade. We're going to march them just kind of straight toward Nicodemus Heights. In my experience, the Confederates generally don't put anything here, which is interesting. Like if you play other Civil War games like Scourge of War, the Confederates always have a ton of artillery here, as they did historically, that's ready to fire into the Union flank. For whatever reason, this game generally starts with that position largely abandoned. Watch now that I'm live streaming this, it'll end up being, heavily defended. All right, with that being said, we're going to go ahead and take our artillery, and we're going to advance the artillery. We're going to advance the artillery south, kind of into this open ground here, because if you can see here, these fence lines, so these little white picket fences through these fields, are going to end up being the Confederates' defensive positions initially. They're going to set up a defense in depth along these fence lines as we attempt to advance south on the Dunker Church. So we'll go ahead and move our artillery here into the open, where we can go ahead and kind of hit them. And then we're just going to kind of advance these guys in general in a southern direction. We'll kind of get Garfield here along the roadway and advance him this way. We'll go ahead and get the Springfield Brigade. They'll advance over these open fields and then swing into these woods, so they'll have a little bit of cover if they come under fire. Additionally, the Iron Brigade's going to advance into these woods and then out into the open. And then Harris's Brigade is also going to advance into the open a little bit further off to the right. And what we're going to do with the Irish Brigade is we're going to advance them, swing them wide through these open fields, and they're going to come down here into these wooded areas and hopefully outflank the Confederate position. Pettit's going to stay back a little bit. He's going to be in reserve. The supply wagon's going to kind of stay in reserve over here. And then my general's going to stay back a little bit, but hopefully close enough to provide a morale boost. I think that's all the orders we have to give at this point. So let's go ahead and get in. All right, so I'm going to fast forward things a little bit because there's no enemies in sight at the moment. We'll let our troops start marching. You can see here we have 2 hours in this initial phase. You can see my general's way far in advance, kind of acting as a scout almost. So we're getting these guys moving. You can see the guys moving through open fields are moving quicker. That's why I moved the Irish Brigade way off to the right so they could move through the fields rather than the forest here. Garfield's really getting hung up in this town. I was hoping he could use those roads, but it doesn't look like he's being very effective in doing that. Okay, so Pettit's halted already, so let's get him going again. And let's get the Springfields to catch up a little bit. So we're going to run the Springfields and the Iron Brigade into position. You can see here the enemy's bringing up some cavalry. I think they probably were originally in this position over here, but they're moving east to support the main Confederate line. All right, you can see here the Confederates have one brigade, the Louisiana Tigers, dug in behind these fences here. Our Springfields and other forces have now started to open fire on the Confederates. As much as I can catch this artillery in the open, the better. Or cavalry, not artillery. Cavalry is very vulnerable in the open. So you can see there we already pushed them back pretty quickly. We'll advance the Springfields. Garfield's running, we'll slow him down. So you've got the Stonewall Brigade, which is kind of dug in this housing area. That's going to be difficult to overcome. The Irish Brigade's going to come in on the flank, hopefully of Stark's. Got Harrison Pettit. Oh, actually, Pettit should fire at Stark here. And as you can see here, we've got two Confederate brigades in very strong defensive positions in these houses and this fence line. One in the open in this field. They've got an additional brigade moving up and another brigade in reserve on this fence line. Additionally, Crocker's brigade is moving toward this Nicodemus Heights. I'm going to move my cavalry over there as well so I can quickly get them into position. I've got some reserves which are coming up already, so I'm just going to kind of give them a generic order to move this way across the open. I probably should try and avoid these woods if I want to move them faster. Can't do anything but a blanket order when we're paused. Or can I? I guess they're just not close enough for me to issue orders to. George B. Gamer, commander's going to go over here. Artillery's still getting into position. I'm actually just debating charging the Stonewall Brigade. They don't actually seem like they're in as good a position as I thought. Someone's charging someone. You can hear the pitch of their voices change to kind of that rebel yell, which usually indicates a charge. The Stonewall Brigade actually might not be in as great a position as I thought they were. Looks like Warren is charging the Springfield guys. Okay, so we've secured Nicodemus Heights. We're going to bring Crocker's brigade over here on the flank now as our cavalry moves into position there. Let's go ahead and pause and see if we can issue detailed orders to these guys now. Still, these guys are too far back for us to do that. All right, well, guess we can't do that yet. You can see the Irish brigade here is on the Confederate flank. Rather than fire at Walker, who's dug in, I'll have them fire at Stark, who's kind of in the open. I'm going to move Pettit and the 2nd Iron Brigade forward. Stonewall's getting chopped to pieces there. Good. Right, halt. Fire at these guys at point blank range. You can see 2 brigades just hitting Warren really hard there. You can see the Stonewall Brigade's already been pushed back. Artillery is into action. They could be a little bit closer, but they're in action. We'll bring our supply wagons up. I don't know why Lynch's brigade is just sitting there. We don't want them to be wasted here. I'm going to keep my artillery on Nicodemus Heights. I could use them for other things, but I also don't want to... Nice. Warren is just getting... Wow. Don't be Warren. Stonewall Brigade's still there. They just got really hit hard. The Confederate brigades in this game really survive a lot of punishment. All right, we're going to charge the Louisiana Tigers with the 2nd Iron. And Garfield, for that matter. We're going to overwhelm them with melee. And they'll have the Springfields charge early here. Alright, you can see we've already pushed them back a bit. But we've kind of broken their initial defensive positions. Stonewall is still here. Alright, halt, guys. I don't want you just running wild. Okay. Confederates are bringing an additional group of brigades up here. Alright, Louisiana's just getting hit hard. Greg's coming up. Caldwell as well. Let's avoid those woods as best we can. Let's use this open terrain to get these guys down here. A little bit of a mess here getting all these soldiers into position, but you can see here our troops are already starting to be exhausted. Alright, and the Irish Brigade is still on the flank of these guys in this wooded terrain. Again, we push the Confederates back from yet another position. Another Confederate brigade is hit really hard. These guys are losing a lot of soldiers. Not being destroyed, but, you know, a 200-man brigade in this game is just not going to be effective for just about anything. So, awesome. We're going to advance Garfield around the flank. Go ahead and... This is going to be a little bit trickier of a position, I think. The enemy has about 1,000 men in position here. Debating just charging him with Pettit, though. Hopefully we can overwhelm them. We're firing into their flank with one brigade, into their front with another. The thing is, when you charge an enemy position that's dug in, they can continue firing volleys while they're in melee, whereas your troops, if they're not dug in, cannot fire volleys when they're in melee. However, if the enemy leaves their entrenchments, as they just did, they no longer have that benefit. So we're getting a little bit bunched up here. Got about 50 minutes left in this period of time. Bring this artillery up. Lynch is still coming up. Bring our supply up. Bring our commander up. Oh no, William Sherman is wounded. Alright, let's bring our artillery down on the flank now. I think we're safe from enemy counterattack here. Not counterattack, but the enemy's trying to sneak like a leaking force in. Okay, the Stonewall Brigade's... but it's retreating. He's the only brigade we've had so far that's retreated. Our troops are getting exhausted, though. That is one thing we've got to kind of manage. Trying to destroy the Stonewall Brigade. Okay. Alright, so these guys are running. Penn's brigade is just vanishing under a hail of musketry. Let's bring these guys up. Let's bring the artillery up as well. We'll get these guys moving in really close. And now we need to use our manpower advantage here and just kind of catch them in a very intense fire while we've got the advantage, because they will have reserves coming up very soon. So we need to use this time that we have, the moment, to our advantage. Early's brigade should get a nice little volley here. Does. Who's fresh? Who can charge? Everybody's exhausted. Alright, the Irish Brigade's gonna kind of go on the flank here. Our Iron Brigade's gonna move forward. We've got 30 minutes here. I don't think we have to take the objective necessarily in 30 minutes, but enemy reserves. Oh, Hood's division is already coming up. So, right where our cavalry was, I think we'll kind of try and delay them with our cavalry over here. Okay. Alright, so Early's brigade is surrendered. Awesome. Keep advancing, guys. Keep advancing up that way. We've secured the Dunker Church, although there's definitely still a contest going on. We've gotten our artillery into the game here. Very close range. Alright, so we'll pull our cavalry back. Gotta bring these guys up. Bring the supply wagons up. I'm sure we're low on supply at this point. And our general. We'll go ahead and pull Early out. Law looks like he's going for that objective, so we're actually going to go ahead and bring Foreman over there. Move Greg into these woods. We're trying to go way around our flank. I can't even see what's left of Penn's force. He's got to be. Alright. Penn's brigade is captured. Nice. The 2 brigades destroyed via prisoners of war. Okay. Walker's brigade borderline destroyed there. Maybe one more volley will get him out of the fight. No, not entirely anyway. Alright. Advance. Alright, we'll bring these guys down to fire into Hood's flank. He's got a couple of brigades, but they're all really small. Alright everyone, that's going to do it for this episode of Ultimate General Civil War and my Battle of Antietam. We've crushed the Confederate left flank, but we now have to move on to defeat the rest of the army. It's about the halfway point in the battle, so I'm going to go ahead and end the video here. Hope you enjoyed everything thus far, and until next time guys, this is the Historical Gamer saying thank you for watching, and I'm out.